Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's just hop in quickly. Today is Monday, January 16th, starting slowly, or starting late. Today, my sleep schedule has just shifted once again, so I'm waking up at I'm staying awake till 3 or 4 in the morning, 5 or 6 in the morning, and then waking up at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, which, yeah, that does not make for the best time to stream. I wish YouTube particularly was more accommodating or accepting of different streaming times or different upload times in general. But you know what? It isn't. So really can't do anything about it. They've slightly shifted the YouTube Studio app, and I'll just throw this out there. This is a YouTuber effectively just whining, but it shows the number of watch hours that I've gotten in the past amount of time, and particularly in about the past year, I have gotten about half as much watch hours as in the previous year, which lines up, I guess, exactly with all of the problems of my computer being broken for several weeks and just me falling further and further behind in making content, and eventually just having to give up and only make one pre-recorded footage series otherwise. So even having potentially some burst of subscribers lately, it's still very possibly would be a struggle. I could very easily have 1,000 subscribers, which is the first requirement to be monetized, and then have to go on just a major push to get people who are subscribed to actually watch a certain amount of time and stay watching just to get the watch hours up. Although, who knows, at any point the algorithm could start suggesting more things. Interesting, we have a new exhibition match here. What is Theme Chronicle going to do? Collect medals during dueling. Well, it says Theme Chronicle, and it looks very much the same as what we've done before. You definitely would want to get 1,100 medals, or whatever these points are. There is, if you get to 1,600, a new face. If you get to 2,200, you get a new title. But I guess the question would just come down to, what are the themes of the cards? You've got some bee troopers here. Yeah, you got bee trooper type characters, which there was an entire solo expansion around bee troopers, so they now potentially are going to have monthly events to highlight specific themes. And definitely worth pointing out that Hercules beetles and things like this and the whole bee trooper theme probably way more popular in Japan than anywhere else, and honestly probably only popular in Japan amongst a certain age of Japanese people. I doubt that kids today in Japan are messing with bees and bugs or have any kind of real obsession with it. The types of beetles and insects in Japan are different, and they have some relevance to them, whereas in most other countries, insects either kill you or they are just incredible nuisances and nobody likes them. In the United States, for instance, cockroaches, pretty prominent, crickets, night crawlers, I see, ants, things like that are not big bugs that you could have any real fascination with because they're just so annoying. And then this is World Legacy themed, which there was yet another solo experience around the World Legacy storyline. Noticeably, both World Legacy and B Troopers were some of the longer solo player sections, and they had more story to them, whereas a lot of the other solo player sections didn't really tell much of a story. It was very short and not complicated at all. Also, I suppose it's worth mentioning, it's not like you got a ton of cards doing the solo story, so even if you had done the solo story for the Danger Line, the World whatever, and the B Trooper section, you probably wouldn't be in much better of a position to make your own deck. This Danger section is another one of the solo stories, although this time it is also including the pirate characters, which was a different solo story. Interesting. So like a combination of two solo stories, which, yeah, if you mix 2 or 3 solo stories together, you could probably get a whole deck out of it. Yep. I assume each of these stories either played in a later Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and showed up, or they were just decently written expansions for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. It is very strange, however, to see that split there. And they also are skipping quite a few of these single player events. So, let's see. Here's the Invincible B Troopers single player. Which, yeah. It wasn't even that long, but I guess it was somewhat memorable because I think there's a return of the B Troopers single player experience too. Maybe not. Actually, I didn't realize how far I'm getting behind on the solo player stuff too. Here's the Pirates one. Here's the Danger Files one. Legend of the Star Heroes. Chosen by the World Legacy, yeah. So yeah, this one in particular is a super long storyline because it just continues. Obviously, they wouldn't be making these fast if this is all brand new content. I would be incredibly shocked if that was the case. But yeah, you can see that is like probably about 6 times longer than most, if not almost all, the other solo player experiences. The Danger Files I don't think was particularly long, but if you mix it with the Pirate Files, you get a pretty long one. This could be a case where they have run out of ideas as far as the solo mode stuff, and they're going to basically stop making solo mode stuff, which I'd be okay with that, frankly, if they'd slowed down with that, because the solo mode stuff just is not really integrating to what Master Duel is. Like, on one hand, I would argue Master Duel should just have the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series storyline in it, like Duel Links, or it should just integrate Duel Links in the Duel Links gameplay style as a second gameplay option, all in one launcher. On the other hand, if you're not going to do that, then Master Duel has to be all about playing ranked gameplay or non-ranked gameplay against other people and not really have a solo mode in it at all. So it is in this weird mushy middle where it's trying to have a solo mode, but the solo mode costs you as much as it earns you, in that it may get you a little bit of cards, but then it unlocks secret packs, and then you have this desire to spend gems for secret packs that you really can't afford, while they are also putting out I'm not going to place that actually. Let's see. You could get a 2 here. And then summon something that way, but I don't think there's a need. What I'm going to do instead is just do this. And I'm just going through the motions here to have enough of these on the field. Let's see. There really is only a tiny danger in doing that, but then I couldn't put my Link Summon characters on the field. So, yeah, no reason to stick with that. You might do that if you wanted 4 spots to use this, but then we're not ready for that to happen. Okay. So unless attacking this would trigger something, that should all be well and good. And we'll just go ahead and set that, even though I said that I wasn't going to do that. For the accountability section, I've been playing Dicey Dungeon and slowly making progress in that, playing it on relaxed mode. It is really just kind of a slow game, kind of a long game. Maybe not even particularly that slow, but there is just not a ton that's happening so far. I think I will probably unlock 1, maybe 2 special items after beating all 3 of the first episodes for all 6 of the characters. The story seems to progress based on just the number of victories you get on specific episodes. Let's go ahead and counter that. Might as well not counter a second time. But yeah, there isn't too much to really say about Dicey Dungeon. It really is a game that would have killed me. Like at the beginning, I counted, I had lost like 8 times. Well, probably 6 or 7 times to 3 or 4 victories playing on the normal mode. The odds are just too tight, frankly, playing on normal mode. It really should just start in relaxed mode and then unlock a normal mode after the fact. Okay. So I can't activate that action anyways. I'll drop this one. But so far there isn't anything that's happening that's particularly special. Each episode in itself potentially changes how the game plays at a fairly drastic rate. Drastic enough that it does just feel a little inconsistent with what the actual game is. And it definitely is a case that you spend 30 minutes to an hour playing the first 5 floors of a dungeon to just set up a build that would potentially win the game for you against the boss battle. And that was what was annoying in not playing in relaxed mode, is that you would totally potentially lose on the boss battle after spending an hour playing it. And there's just like no randomization on it. Compared to something like Rogue Legacy, you don't get random stats on the characters, you don't really get random attacks or health on the enemies, you don't really get random layouts of the dungeons. There really isn't a choice of where they go. You have to fight everybody on the floor if you want to be at max health for the boss fight, and if you're not at max health on the boss fight, you're probably going to lose. So there really isn't an option there. It definitely feels like something, like a game that a second pass, more polish, more playtesting may have revealed something more, as far as just saying that the game should have some extra enemies that you can skip, have more random placement of items, random assignment of items. In a lot of ways it feels like there is kind of a monster manual from which each of the characters comes from, and a very limited number of attacks each of the characters can have, which is exactly what it is. Let's see, trying to catch up on Destiny Child on my phone while I'm losing in a one-turn kill. Interesting. I don't think I had a chance of succeeding there. So, if I cared enough, I would save the duel and just go back and pay attention to what just happened there, but it's better just to forget it and move on forward. Okay. We do have to talk about Twitter. Twitter has changed its appearance. There used to be when my ad blocker wasn't enabled, a bar up here that would say latest tweets or home, and you would, by default, I was always on latest tweets just to watch it chronologically. There was also a sidebar over here, and they've now moved it into more of like a smartphone layout, even for computer browsers, Firefox, where this extra stuff is all here, as far as home, explore, notifications, and messages, and how you get to your settings. I guess you have to click on your name. So by default now it's going to try and push you to this For You, which is just some random curated feed, much like Facebook. So there's that. Also, let's turn the ad blocker back on and just show what it, for the most part, it still just looks exactly the same as it did before with my ad blocker. So it's not that is easily overlooked in my case. But if I am potentially being shown different content and I don't realize it, or a different order, that's gonna change things. It also seems to be intentional, although it hasn't been announced or confirmed, that they've blocked or messed with third-party access to basically all apps, including the one Twitter TweetDeck app that Twitter owns. Which at a certain level, I can't even really blame them for that. Like, this may be a case where they're doing the painful things that they need to do to get ads and get people actually on their own website that they can control and that they can evolve and change over time, versus people using third-party apps to make the experience that they want, that also may include adding a lot of bots or removing a lot of ads. It does not make a lot of sense to have a third-party API for any product that is selling the end-user experience as part of its product, which Twitter is. If Twitter was only a service and it just didn't care about its own experience because it knew it was trying to sell third-party API access that way, then it would be a different experience, certainly. That is kind of what Google Ads and AdSense does. Like, nobody goes to Google Ads or AdSense and just browses ads that way. They see Google Ads through other products, including Google's own products like Google Search and YouTube and whoever else buys into that system. And that is certainly a business model you can have. If I skip that one character and attack now, how many cards are stacked here? 3. I'll try something different here. But see, now it seems to say yes 4, but that may include the top card. Yeah. Like, it still feels like Elon Musk has managed to be shut up one way or another. Nobody who wants to be outraged has been able to find a way to be outraged around anything he's tweeted or said publicly. So maybe internally he's burning the place down, but externally there is some change there. And honestly, if you have somebody who's crazy and who's a problem and you just can get them to shut up, that's the first step to progress, I would say. Kanye West, I think, kind of same idea. As either Kanye West has stopped saying things, or he's just been deplatformed so much that he hasn't been able to say anything. It very possibly is a case of deplatforming more than anything else, and it may be Elon Musk and Kanye and even Trump have just been deplatformed enough that nobody's reporting on it enough that I'm hearing them say anything. But if that were the case, that they were actively trying to deplatform Elon Musk, they would have found a new punching bag, and I haven't heard about a new outrage person to replace Elon Musk with lately. So I would think that the general 24-hour news people would still be talking about him if you were saying anything. So yeah, I've definitely tried to be as optimistic as possible with all the drama around Twitter. Not that I even really care about Twitter that much. I mean, I could pretty easily pretty easily stop using it, and I would only miss out on a few sources of information. But I would hate to lose it. One of the things also about Twitter, certainly, is that if you've amassed a following of any sort on Twitter, jumping over to something like Mastodon or some other service is still really an impossible ask, because it's not just asking you to jump over, it's asking every one of your followers to jump over. Me personally, I don't think I have that many followers on Twitter, so I could do that, but then I wouldn't be following the people that don't jump over. Whereas leaving Facebook is a lot harder, though, because to leave Facebook, you are leaving every memory and old post, whereas nobody cares about old tweets. They were never designed to have any significant impact, and that's where Twitter, even far before Elon Musk failed, is that they never put any value in your posts or tweets in it from a historical perspective. So even if you did put out an amazing tweet and it got 1,000 or 1,000,000 retweets and trended, like, you aren't reminded of that. Apparently Ben Brode is going to be on Game Maker's Notebook podcast. I've never heard of this podcast, which, okay, I guess if you wanted that in-depth information. Like, generally whenever you see a game creator on a podcast, though, they say very little, and they often feel like they're half drunk or just goofing around and just like say something offensive more than say something like genius. There is no inside the actor's studio type podcast that I know of that really gets game developers to sit down and actually talk about what happened, other than them self-aggrandizing and spinning what is probably somewhat of a fake narrative. And particularly in the case of like Ben Brode, he's the boss of Second Dinner, so his decisions would have been big decisions when he made big decisions, but like most management, he probably didn't make that many decisions at all. Well, I wouldn't be surprised in the case of Marvel Snap if Nexus, which I think funded that game, I could be wrong about that, or published it. I wouldn't be surprised if the publisher or any other funder managed to get the Marvel license in the first place and forced everything to go into Marvel. You kind of hope that the publisher or some other funder forced them to put in the ridiculous, insane amount of monetization in Marvel Snap, which it was worse in the beta, and it's still awful and just getting worse. So particularly when you look at Marvel Snap, you have a card game that takes about 3 minutes and gets incredibly repetitive and doesn't really have that many varied actions that take place while you are playing it. And that's all you can say about Marvel Snap that's good. Like, the 90% of the time I've spent on Marvel Snap, mostly just wasting my life away, has been in the menu upgrading the insane amount of different variants of card art to get a collector level up, to get more currencies, to then upgrade cards some more. It's basically an idle game. And I'm sure Ben Brode probably didn't didn't commit a lot of code, or any code, potentially to Marvel Snap. Okay. No face-up showing cards. Lets me do this. Let's go ahead and activate this now. Toss this one. Activate that one. Toss that one. Activate that one. Go ahead and give me this, I guess. Summon this. Activate. Get rid of 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Summon that. Now we don't want to activate this guy's effect this time, since we don't have anything. Activate this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Summon this. Sacrificing each of these. Don't activate that. Don't activate that. Go ahead and activate this effect. Tossing that. Put that there. Don't activate that. Don't activate that. And attack. Unless he's got something he can do. I've won. 3,000, 6,000, 1,200. Wouldn't have gotten a full victory alone, so but the extra 1,200 did it. Let's see. Keep on dueling, I guess. The Last of Us HBO episode 1 came out. I'm hearing a lot of praise around it. People seem to really like it for the couple of things I've seen about it, which is good. It would definitely suck if the first episode of the show was bad. Whereas, like, the Resident Evil Netflix series, episode 1, was definitely cringeworthy and bad. And so, yeah, it's a good start. There's plenty of opportunity, certainly, for it to go get better, I guess, and get worse. So, you, I guess, have to we'll keep an eye out on that. At a certain level, if it does succeed, The Last of Us HBO TV series, it may very well just send the message that only HBO, with their budget and with their production staff, are the only ones really capable of making a successful show, because yeah, it is definitely believable that only HBO can do a good job. And that's not a good ratio, too. I need to make complete sentences when I'm talking. Yeah, the ratio is really, really bad as far as the successful video game to TV to movie transitions. And at a certain level, I almost wonder if I would prefer to if it was unsuccessful and that they would just give up on that. But obviously they're not going to give up on video game to movie and TV adaptations, because they're out of ideas otherwise as far as making new TV shows. And it may very well be a case that just all sci-fi and all sci-fi and fantasy movies and TV shows may be based off of video games first, and that any attempt to make an original sci-fi movie or TV show would become considerably less likely to get approved in favor of something that's proven. Inherently, TV and movie TVs and movies channels and production companies have never really understood what makes good sci-fi or fantasy movies, and particularly with you have executive producers at production companies either being so old that they grew up making westerns, or being so young that they've only really made reality shows such as Survivor and things like that. And we've never really gotten past the let's make some cheap Survivor reality shows or MTV type reality shows. And even my references there are pretty old. But yeah, they've never gotten really past that. At best, you get scripted cop dramas over and over again. The fact that there's it feels like 4 Chicago shows: Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, maybe just 3 of them, 3 NCISs. It is just all police procedural nonsense. Well, that'll save me this time. So we're probably seeing, I'm going through the news in a weird way here, but we're probably seeing the tail end of the litigation and lawsuit and confusion around who owned the Michael Myers Friday the 13th character, in that this Friday the 13th game, which it was Friday the 13th just a couple days ago. Today is actually Martin Luther King Day, and I'm seeing a little bit on Twitter around that, but not a ton that would be video game related. Yeah. It's kind of hard to talk civil rights or race relations or even labor movements in general in video games, because you just don't have a lot of connection to that. And frankly, video games being a fictional thing, talking about a real thing, just kind of confuses the issue. But as far as Friday the 13th, yeah, they couldn't renew the license because they almost certainly got the license from somebody who didn't own the license, or even if they did get it from the right person, just renewing the license probably was too expensive for what they wanted to do. Basically, the developers of Friday the 13th Killer Puzzle have another game called Slayaway Camp that's basically the exact same thing. This is a puzzle game, and there's a whole bunch of puzzles, and you can get the game on Steam for free before it's delisted next week, and you can get most but not all of the DLC. Which, that's the sucky part about this, is that at the end of the day you could get like 9 DLCs that would give you a decent amount of puzzles. I've played Friday the 13th Killer Puzzle on my cell phone, and I didn't even like it. It's just kind of boring and repetitive. It's turn-based, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's got these blocky characters in this blocky art style. Almost like a Lego Brickheads, but not quite. But yeah, it would have made a lot more sense if all of the level DLC at least was yeah, if it gave you all the level packs for free and then charged money for the cosmetics, that would be acceptable and understandable. But honestly, why not just give it all away for free to get one big push? Like, at least the level packs, but why not the cosmetics too? Apparently Tencent fired over 100 workers on suspicion of corruption in 2022. I don't know if I believe that, which that was probably an excuse for at least some of them. And the Nintendo Switch has overtaken the Wii to become France's best-selling home console. It's overtaken the Wii in France. Alright. I'm talking about articles, but I'm doing it in a weird way because I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed. And I really should have scrolled down my Twitter feed before. Since it is Martin Luther King Day, I suppose it's worth pointing out too that in one of the many acts after segregation and was ended, a lot of states, and you would call them southern states, but let's just say states in general, enacted and put up a lot of statues of people like Robert E. Lee, and they made Martin Luther King Robert E. Lee Day, which there's just like there was nobody celebrating Robert E. Lee before that point, and there's no reason to have celebrated Robert E. Lee. That literally is just it was you hate to use the word dog whistle, better just to call it a slap in the face of anything. But yeah, so even now to this day there are people who, I'm sure a lot of them are not familiar with the history, or who have been told a bunch of lies, let's just call it that are still singing the praises of Robert E. Lee, or trying to celebrate Robert E. Lee Day today as much as possible. But you definitely don't see that on Twitter, and you definitely won't see that really talked about anywhere other than in the deepest of the deep South type areas. Yeah. It's okay, so I've gone through my entire Twitter feed. It still definitely feels like I'm seeing most of what I would have been seeing pre Elon Musk on Twitter. It doesn't seem like it is disappearing or becoming incredibly worse. Let's see, do we want to activate this? Sure. Yeah, started late today and definitely wasn't fully awake. And I can feel that, certainly, as I'm just moving out of order. And these streams really need a rapid pace and a lot of focus for just like 2 to 3 hours straight. To get back to what I was whining about at the very beginning of this stream, I wonder if maybe I would get more watch hours if I could figure out how to make the episodes on pre-recorded footage and live streams shorter. I think I heard YouTube is also going to now let you actually see how many watch hours you're getting specifically from live streams, which would definitely give me another bit of information to potentially react to. Yeah. I'm obviously just incredibly bad about the idea of hiding cuts. Like, if I could hide, and if I could do editing and cuts in pre-recorded footage, which I have no experience on, I would be so bad at it. The cuts would just be either fade outs or jump cuts, and in playing the video game, there's just kind of no way to hide that. When you think of something like Game Grumps where they don't show the face, it's possible that the conversations they're having are conversations that are somewhat sped up. I could see that potentially happening where the actual talk part has some edits in it and then it's sped up to just fit the time of the video footage. But most of the video footage, I think it definitely feels like it's just live. I played out of order there somehow. That went poorly. Can I only use this once? I thought you... Yeah, once per turn you can detach it to destroy something. Oh, well. I did that absolutely wrong. But it will be this opponent's turn, so we should be able to activate this the second time. Do I have enough now? Well, I guess for the accountability section, I should also say I've been watching Chicago Party Ant on Netflix, which is a little bit better of one of these Netflix comedy things. It definitely is very, very heavy on Chicago humor. But yeah, I definitely find the comedy written a little bit better. Perhaps it's because there's just fewer characters and they aren't just cartoony characters compared to the Paradise PD cartoon. Chicago Party Ant, I guess, comes off a little bit more like a drama narrative also, whereas Paradise PD was very much trying to be something like Family Guy. Moving on, let's start talking about video game news. John Carpenter thinks another director is working on a Dead Space film. We already talked about that. Fresh from its latest delay, Ubisoft premieres a 30 minutes of Skull and Bones gameplay, which why would you even bother to watch this? This is like the 7th delay of Skull and Bones, so why even get hyped? Let's see. Just start with this. Which... that is probably the wrong choice, but whatever. Okay. What I probably would like to do is change my extras deck a little bit so that I have more Zodiac Tri-Brigade types of cards. There's got to be a 4th style that I could potentially summon instead of having this guy who's special. Because I do need 4 cards for Zeus, so I can use Zeus's ability twice. But I don't like having to make a choice between Borbo, who can directly attack and summon Zeus, and this guy, Trident, who can destroy cards. Honestly, if I could get another Zeus in the extra stack, that would be nice too. I probably should stop playing at this point too, or at least check the daily quest to see how far I am. Apparently days before its closure, Stadia has released its humble test game. I can't help but assume that this was either in development or this was something that always existed as a test game. Apparently it was used to test cloud features in 2019 according to Google. It seems weird, but they're not bothering to even like port it to something else, because wouldn't it make a lot more sense to just put it out for free from Google on Google Play Store than to release it on the Stadia? And definitely it looks weird for a Snake game, and it doesn't feel like a Snake-like game would really be the best test of like latency and things like that. It works pretty well, but you would think more of a light cycle type game. Snake, compared to light cycles, basically the same game anyways, but Snake tends to feel a little slower. I definitely would think you would want multiple test games, more like a WarioWare minigame collection instead. Something that would test pressing specific buttons fast, or on top of just like analog stick up and down, which is I assume all the Snake game did. Plus you would also want to just have like frame counters and frame stutters, things like that. Yeah, this would be a good point to stop and just focus on the news. Yeah, if it weren't for the way YouTube messes around with notifications and everything, it would make a lot of sense for me to play for an hour of Yu-Gi-Oh! Then find hopefully an easy way to switch the information on the live stream, stop the live stream, take a small break, come back, do the video game news. And yeah, that would be ideally how I would like to play it. But that's not how YouTube lets me do it. So they want me to do these Twitch like super long streams, which I did start with complaining, and I didn't start with admitting that, you know what, a lot more people have been watching these live streams these days too. So I've been getting more views. So I should be applauding that and thanking everybody for watching that, even if they are maybe only watching for a few minutes when they have free. Fusion, Pendulum, and Link Summon. 14 more days to get that done. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that though. Apparently the Callisto Protocol reportedly hasn't met publisher sales expectations. The game released to mixed reviews last month. That's not particularly surprising. Like, what could get the sales to go up? I think at this point you really are just like, let's just discount the game, fire sale the game a little bit. Try to do a $10, maybe even $15 discount on it to get it into more people's hands. Otherwise, the other option, and it's probably the option they will do, is that they will just leave everything alone and just hope that a long tail of sales gets them over to a profitable spot enough that they can work slowly on adding patches and improving the game. Like, there's not much else they could do. Inherently, if the Callisto Protocol was published by the same makers of Dead Space, you could have given away a free copy of Dead Space 1 to boost sales that way, or a free copy of any other game that EA owns, because yeah, I think it's EA that's publishing Dead Space anyways. So, but since Callisto Protocol is by a brand new company, they really don't have anything else they can offer. They can try and get good press, and they can say thank you for your support, thank you for your patience, things like that. A lot of game companies probably should do that, and they should just have a advertising campaign set up of positivity. If the game sells well or if the game sells badly, it should just be always an advertisement campaign of positivity on top of positivity. Let's see. The Simpsons Home Hit and Run soundtrack has been released on Apple Music and Spotify, which, yeah, that's interesting that they would still have the rights to the music, but I would have to assume that this is all original music, or very possibly it was all music owned by the same parent company. Sniper Rangers on the chat saying yellow, hello. Here, VideoGamesChronicle.com says where to watch Last of Us TV show. In the United States, I think you have to watch it on HBO or HBO Max. In the UK, I assume it's the same. It will air every week on Sky Atlantic at 2 a.m. BST. And in the US, HBO and HBO Max. But they don't even have the airing times of HBO. Now, one thing I will say is they need to stop with the gimmick of just showing the characters from behind. And if that really is what the TV show is that it is always just going to be this third-person perspective, which technically, I guess in this case, would be a fourth-person perspective to make it feel like a video game, that's not going to work. And I don't think it really plays that way. When you look at an actual screenshot here, they've got it. They've got their face showing up. Let's see. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's next 7-star Terra raid features Greninja. Okay. I don't really know what a Terra raid is, but it does seem like there's more of an online. We're going to try and add more content to Scarlet and Violet to keep the kids playing. Which I guess that's an interesting thought, but what they definitely have not said is that they've fixed any of the bugs or improved any of the experience as far as playing Scarlet and Violet. So bringing kids back with Terra raids to a bad experience is going to have minimal results. Here are the record-breaking speedruns from Awesome Games Done Quick 2023. I guess it's over now. I watched their YouTube channel. Honestly, Awesome Games Done Quick and all these speedrunning shows at this point are better just to follow them on YouTube and watch their breakdowns of specific games on specific streams after the fact, where you can fast forward and you can play it at double speed instead of watching it live or doing anything like that. I definitely didn't feel like I saw any real games that I wanted to see speedrun. They've 2 or 3 years ago they basically ran out of new games and new speedruns to show, and there's just not really major improvements towards the speedruns. So like this Steven Seagal The Final Option prototype was kind of new and unique, and Shredder's Revenge is a new game, so that's probably new and unique. But yeah, they really didn't have anything great there. There are tons of games on Steam that are bad, so if you could get just one person to speedrun one random Steam game that's never been covered before, that would be interesting filler content around the same old stuff. Metroid Prime speedruns, Link's Awakening speedruns, things like that. What they could probably do is make everybody who puts in a submission for one game speedrun tell them that we're going to give you a random game that we also want you to speedrun. Inherently, Games Done Quick also is still just doing everything remotely at this point, so there's no audience, and it definitely has lost the feeling of being a fun event. They raised $2.6 million for Prevent Cancer Foundation, and good for them for that. But yeah, I do feel like these speedrun events have really lost their appeal to me. Let's see, a 2-hour trial of The Last of Us Part 1 is now on PS Plus Premium. So obviously this is because of the movie. Which inherently, though, that is also going to show that the characters in Last of Us Part 1 obviously aren't going to be 100% copies of the characters in the 3D models. And so it's going to feel a little awkward potentially to play the game and go, well, that's not the Ellie that I remember, or the Ellie on the TV is not the Ellie I remember. Let's see. Microsoft will reportedly receive an EU antitrust warning over Activision Blizzard deal. The body is due to make a decision on the acquisition by April. Yeah, we'll believe it when we see it, I suppose. Like, pretty much, it was pretty obviously pretty obviously that Microsoft was going to have to fight the Activision Blizzard deal merger in a number of Sniper Rangers is chiding me for stating the obvious that says there's tons of stream games that are bad. Yeah, what I was saying there, though, is if specifically the Awesome Games Done Quick event forced the speedrunners to play not particularly a bad game, but a random game that nobody's ever seen that might be bad. I may have stated bad and wrong there. It would spice up that entire event because they've gotten incredibly repetitive in doing the same games over and over again, and they do have kind of a short block that they do, I think, overnight of new things, but they need to start mining the depths of Steam to find new content. And I would somewhat say, when you look at percentages of gamers and gamer content on YouTube and Twitch, that there really isn't a lot of push to play random games or bad games, but yeah. But yeah, because inherently, if you're on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, you want to get views, so you want to play the AAA games. That's why things like Among Us and Minecraft are so popular, is that half of those content creators aren't in love with Among Us and Minecraft. They just know that gets them views. PewDiePie undoubtedly only plays Minecraft when he does play Minecraft because it gets him views every now and then. Captain Sparkles and Mumbo Jumbo, who have been making Minecraft for 10 years, like, they probably do have some love in their heart for it, but they also are definitely doing a business decision to continue to play on Minecraft. But yeah, I do agree with Sniper Ranger though. Yes, I don't want to see all content creators just going to actively seek out bad games. Horror games are often bad on, not particularly on purpose, just because no effort's put into them, and you see a lot of streamers, reaction streamers, doing horror games. I would like to see all gamers though, and content creators are different than gamers, spread their wings a little bit and try out some other games, smaller games, lesser known games, in the same way that I would like to see movie people spread their wings and watch other kinds of movies instead of just Marvel movies. Moving on, the Silent Hill series producer wants more indie studios to pitch Silent Hill games. The future of Silent Hill will only continue. I'm getting all tongue-tied here. Seashells. Nope, can't even do it. It probably is better for a series that always was just a random assembly of random developers, that Silent Hill would be made by random people and just be almost like a Twilight Zone equivalent, where different writers are telling different stories, and the only real connection is Silent Hill, whatever Silent Hill is, as a magical place. I still am somewhat concerned, though, that Silent Hill 1 is not being touched upon. Like, there needs to be some game, some remake that just remakes Silent Hill 1 amongst a collection of new Silent Hill games and a collection of remakes towards Silent Hill 2. And then certainly the remakes are going to get questionable. Like, you probably want to remake Silent Hill 3, but I don't even know what the actual name of Silent Hill 4 is, and I don't know if there even is a Silent Hill 5. Silent Hill 4 may be The Room. Silent Hill 5 might be something else. I think there might be a Silent Hill Downfall. That might be a different series. But yeah, even now, as they're announcing remakes of Silent Hill 2, it doesn't feel like there is a logical way to get into the series or a chronological order to potentially play the games that are coming out. Am I supposed to play Silent Hill 2 Remake first? Probably. And then the other 2 or 3 Silent Hill games, what order do I play those in? Or does it not matter? It probably would matter somewhat, even if they're completely disconnected stories. Yeah, we already talked about Friday the 13th being delisted. Really should show it off, though, on Steam. Does it have... Yeah. Did they bother to link it to Steam? Google Play Store, Steam. There we go. Steam. Clicking on Steam literally just takes it back to Steam. Okay. Well, then let's come over here. And then let's search. When I search, it gets to its Google Play link, and it's not until you get way far down do you get the Steam link on Google. That's obvious. So yeah, here's Friday the 13th, the killer puzzle. Like, I think the weapons are probably collectibles more than anything. Yep, it's just not much of a game, not very well animated. I wouldn't be surprised if every single actual puzzle, as far as just enemy layout and such, are put in Slayaway Camp. And see, the problem here too is if you're going to come in here and get each DLC, you're going to have to click on each DLC and add it to your library individually. You can't just add all the free DLC to your shopping cart and then check out for free. Steam doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And yeah, it just makes no sense that Return to Crystal Lake episode 9, The Ripper episode 10, Nightmare episode 11, and Jurassic Jason episode 12 are all still asking for $3 each. So it's like $12 of DLCs they still want to play, so they can pretend like it's free, and a lot of it is free, but you're not going to get a complete experience that way. And then each of these outfits are just some amount of money. So in total, if you buy the $5 soundtrack too, you're still spending like $30 here. So they're really not treating you as nicely as they probably should. When you look at what else they have to show, they have their original game Slayaway Camp, which is basically the same thing. Anyways, it just doesn't have the Friday the 13th license. And then they have Hypergalactic Psychic Table Tennis, which they're not really promoting either. Or Space Tyrant, which doesn't really connect either. So, yeah. This is overwhelmingly positive and effectively the exact same thing. Yep. And this is visuals that just maybe needed to exist when they first started making mobile games in 2016, but nowadays really don't need to exist at all and just look really ugly. Slayaway Camp, in comparison, is $8.99, and then the DLC here would be $3.99, $4, and then Santa expansion for $2, Monthly Murder Series 1 for 99 cents, which I guess they probably didn't go any further with that, and Supernatural Forces for $2. So if you were to buy all of this, it would only cost $9. Maybe there's considerably fewer puzzles in this game. Like, obviously what you would do is, if the enemy layouts and puzzles are missing for Slayaway Camp, you would just take that content and move it over to Slayaway Camp and get rid of the Friday the 13th license. Very possibly they stopped working on this game because they got the Friday the 13th license. Moving on, Nintendo Switch overtakes Wii to become France's best-selling home console. We already talked about that. Yeah. I suspect we will see that happen for everybody, as long as the Wii, as long as the Switch is the only real Nintendo option. Now, the only thing that could undercut this is if they announced a Switch 2. And even at that, I imagine the Switch probably still has enough momentum to oversell the Wii worldwide. Which, I don't know if that's the best message really just to send to Nintendo. It's the message that's going to get sent no matter what, but Nintendo really needs to make a more powerful device and not be allowed to consistently make cheap consoles that are underpowered even when they're launched on day one, and just be able to sell the same games over and over again and sell games on the Nintendo branding more than anything, or sell consoles on the Nintendo branding. Of course, the problem also has to fall on the shoulders of Microsoft and Sony. Both of them have completely abandoned or dropped the ball on anything that would be considered a reasonable priced console to parents of little kids, nor have they got a lineup of kid-friendly games that is good enough, nor have they got any kind of portable actions in their consoles either. And since Microsoft is basically in third place, it really falls on Microsoft more than Sony even to say, hey, let's make something that is like a Steam Deck, like a Nintendo Switch, that would work with an Xbox Series S, Series X, or work separately without needing those things. But let's jump back into portability. And I can see Microsoft really doing that. Sony definitely should think about doing that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sony is just too proudful, or just too unfocused on actual game sales and actual console sales to do that. Let's see, NPD is revealed the best-selling games of 2022 in the United States. Which, yeah, this is a list that will definitely show just what the average gamer is playing. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Elden Ring, Madden NFL 23, God of War Ragnarok, Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga sold really well. Scarlet and Violet, Pokemon, FIFA 23, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Nintendo really abandoned Arceus when they probably should have resold it, put it out there, tried to announce an Arceus 2. Horizon Forbidden West selling pretty well, probably because there wasn't a lot of options for PlayStation owners. And MLB The Show 23. Yep. Of course, your best-selling games obviously are not going to include small indie games that very few people played. And certainly it won't include things that, even if Sonic Frontiers was amazing, being released in December, it wouldn't have had a chance of being the best of the year. Let's see, Video Games Chronicles, we got a couple more articles and then we'll be done with them. The House of the Dead remake will be released on PlayStation 5 this week. It'll be available as a free upgrade for PlayStation 4 owners. So, the question here, though, I guess this is half off on Steam for PC gamers, that's me. When did the House of the Dead remake come out? Yeah, it came out on the Switch in April of 2022. And I imagine the graphics didn't look amazing on the Switch, but it is also an older game. The graphics here don't look terrible. That you're going to have a problem here where, unless you have a light gun configuration, you will just be using a control stick on the PlayStation, and I assume mouse might be a little bit better on PC. But if not, using a control stick is going to be weird. This is where the typing of the Dead managed to have more relevancy once it went to PC, is because most people aren't going to have a light gun. There is a light gun thing I could buy, but what would be the point? If you spend $100 to $200 for a light gun accessory on your PC, you're then so committed that you're going to buy pretty much any light gun game you can possibly have. And so yeah, at that point there is no consumer advice I can give as a critic to somebody who has to just desperately buy everything. Here's the game on Steam. Yeah, the visuals don't look awful. Now, I don't personally have any nostalgia for this game. It does have full controller support. And I don't think Steam ever announces mouse and keyboard support. So yeah, this would be rough. A rough game to play with a mouse, I suppose, but maybe there's an easy mode that I could get around it, and certainly it meets all the requirements for this to be on my wish list. But yeah, this really is a light gun only game, in my mind, in the same way that people who buy VR headsets, which a new VR headset was announced as potentially a new competitor to the current ones. If you buy a VR headset, you're going to desperately seek out VR games to justify the purchase of the VR headset. If you buy a light gun accessory for your computer, you're desperately going to seek out games like this to justify buying the light gun accessory. And the vast majority of gamers would end up playing games like that with just either mouse or keyboard or controller, and they're going to have a lesser experience. So there's definitely some weirdness there. Now, the Nintendo Joy-Cons can particularly act like a Wiimote, like a gun. So it being remade for the Switch made sense. But then porting it to other things is really just a sign of how popular the game is, or they think the game was. Final Video Games Chronicles articles today. PlayStation shows off 2023's most exciting games in a new trailer. They're focusing on Resident Evil 4 remake, Forspoken, Horizon. What is this? Is this the multiplayer Horizon? Or is this DLC? It says Horizon Call of the Mountain. Final Fantasy 16, which I think you're betting big that it actually gets released in 2023. Assassin's Creed Mirage, which hasn't gotten that much hype yet. Street Fighter, whatever, 13, whatever the number is. And then Spider-Man 2. And I guess the question to ask here is which of these would even be exclusives to push the PlayStation further. I could see maybe Final Fantasy is going to be a timed exclusive. Spider-Man 2 is going to be a fairly long timed exclusive. And Horizon Call of the Mountain is probably going to be somewhat of a timed exclusive. But Forspoken, Resident Evil 4, Assassin's Creed, and Street Fighter are not. And if anything, you could imagine them cutting out the shape and just having 3 to show instead of 7. Let's see. Starfield is going to be an Xbox exclusive. This is a list of links, I guess, to other potential 2023 things. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Bayonetta Origins, Pikmin 4, Hades 2, Hogwarts Legacy, apparently not being promoted. I suppose it's also worth pointing out that the Horizon Forbidden West expansion Burning Shores, that's not what that says, though, on that icon. Yeah, and if you're promoting an expansion or a side multiplayer game, that's not going to appeal to a lot of people. Yeah, that clearly says Call of the Mountain there, not Burning Shores. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to mention too that they're going to heavily promote the PlayStation VR 2. So there's going to be 2 events kind of competing for people's attention as to whether or not they want to stick with the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 and play regular 2D games, or whether they want to spend a massive amount of money to get a VR 2 and play a completely different collection of games. Let's see, Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse for basically everything has some developer commentary gameplay. This is not a game that is being released as much as this is. Well, no, it is coming out on March 9th, but they're doing the developer commentary early. Oh yeah, I remember why. Because this is actually a remake of, not a remake, a remaster re-release of a earlier Wii game. So they felt confident to do a developer commentary and not particularly spoil anything or spoil things, because it's already been spoiled for most players anyways. Man, I am not doing good today as far as talking. A lot of ahs and ums, not making myself clear, stuttering, stammering. This week's Japanese game releases include Fire Emblem Engage, Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, Monster Hunter Rise ports, and more. Let's see. In Japan, we're now looking at the Komatsu articles. Space for the Unbound, Fire Emblem Engage, Never Wake, Snowball Princess Sayaku for the Switch, Tetris Effect Connected, and then Tristia Legacy Restore and Try Bundle Pack. A lot of these other ones are digital only releases coming to Microsoft Store and things like that. Steam, some of them. Noticeably, Persona 4 Golden here, launching on the Microsoft Store, so I think it already was on Steam. It almost certainly is a mistake, though, for them to release, even digitally, Persona 3 and Persona 4 Golden at the same time. And Monster Hunter Rise at the same time. If this is all the same publisher, like, why not stagger those releases somewhat so that one audience could play like Persona 3 for release this a week earlier than release this the next week, or release this a month earlier, release this in the next month. Let's see, Guilty Gear XRD Rev 2 for PC to add rollback netcode on January 20th. I'm sure fighting game fans will love that. A game called Black Myth Wukong launches in the summer of 2024, so that is an early announcement, and it seems like they are assuming here it is going to take 2 discs. I guess the question here is that the way things go now? Do video games take at least 2 discs? Very possibly they do. I don't think these are real discs. I think this is some kind of like miniature that is being shown off as part of this, some kind of Chinese New Year short film. Yeah. It is a stop motion miniature. And this is a PC game. And it definitely feels like a Chinese game, and it definitely feels like we're in a very weird position. And now, with like Chinese games and China in general, where I saw numbers that 60% of all Chinese people have COVID or have tested positive for COVID. And I think that's in the recent history, in the past couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, not that just everybody tests positive because everybody got it and has the antibodies. So yeah, that's incredibly high numbers. So yeah, any game getting released to a Chinese audience, if half the audience is either being quarantined against their will or quarantining themselves or just sick, like there really isn't ways to play games at that point, or even work to have money to play games at that point. Let's see, White Day 2, The Flower That Tells Lies, has a 3rd teaser trailer and screenshots. I guess White Day 2 is the sequel to White Day 1, which I know there's a game called White Day 1, but I may very well, in my mind, be confusing that with, let's see, I may very well be confusing White Day with several other Korean style horror games. Like, none of these characters jump out at me as being characters I would recognize, and this art style seems to be completely different. Yeah. And I assume that this is a Korean game, but I'm very possibly wrong about that. I really should bring up like White Day 1 in comparison, because these visuals look way better than what I recall White Day 1 looked like. It is possible that White Day could slowly becoming the new Silent Hill type series, or any series like this could be the next Silent Hill, and people would just potentially not recognize it because there very possibly is a slow build up to niche favorite games. In almost every case, most things that became niche favorites didn't succeed in their initial run. Like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I don't believe that actually succeeded when it originally was in theaters. It wasn't until years later that it got rerun over and over again that it started becoming like successful. Interesting. Komatsu's link brought me to something that looks very different. I don't know. This looks like this is still Komatsu's website, but it looks so incredibly different. Okay. So it's a little wrong here, but not 100% wrong. Yeah. The graphics here for a 2017 game, 5 years ago game, are a little rough, a little cartoony, and they are definitely going from that direction to another direction. Noticeably, there seems to be a whole bunch of costumes and outfits not too different from what you would expect from some of the other. What is that other game? We just talked about it too. Oh, we literally just talked about it. The Fatal Frame series. Fatal Frame series known for having ridiculous costumes, and this also has ridiculous costumes. I can't blame people for perving out on the characters. If you animated the characters and you like the characters and want the characters to get attention or like them. Also in horror games, making it ridiculous makes some sense. Yeah. And the languages here is just full English, full Korean, and full Chinese, which definitely makes me think that it is a Korean game. Japanese is not even a option on this one. So yeah, I guess if I was rolling the money, I would probably buy this game and try and play it for October before the sequel comes out. Try to play some things more in a more relevant amount of time. Moving on, Disguise 7 has yet another trailer. House of Dead remake we already talked about. Front Mission First Remake Physical Launch Edition launches this spring in Europe and the summer in North America. And that's the last of our Gematsu articles. So there wasn't really a ton of news here. We have what I assume is an adult game here called Dark Desire Mute 1, which is seemingly just a visual novel of some 3D CGI characters. None of the screenshots are actually too offensive here. It doesn't seem like it's particularly well done, but the price is right at being free. So yeah, I assume the first episode will be free, and then they will try to get you to keep on buying. It seems like there might be maybe some storyline options that branch, but otherwise it does just seem like it's a visual novel with a lot of asset flipped. Here's one asset flip background, here's an asset flip 3D models of characters. Yeah. Let's see. Moving on. Space Landing. I'll give this a chance. I do think I might be moving myself in. This is just a tower defense game, isn't it? Yeah. Should I ignore tower defense games or give them YouTube Shorts? I think I'll give them YouTube Shorts. Anyways, what I was saying is that I feel like I am getting a little bit more into the habit of every Friday turning the YouTube Shorts into YouTube Shorts and getting them to upload. It makes a lot of sense to not even try to do anything after streaming on Friday and instead just make that the day in which I'll commit my computer to running the macro without me and making the YouTube shorts, since that takes a while, maybe an hour or so. But that still doesn't address Mondays and Wednesdays, where I always have the ambition of doing more pre-recorded footage on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I really don't ever succeed at it. Next game we have on Steam here is called Brothel Simulator, which is 3D CGI characters engaging in sexual acts in what looks very much like a strip club, and honestly not so much like a brothel, because inherently in a brothel you would assume you would meet up in a front room and then go off into separate rooms. These separate rooms maybe just have average beds on them, or you might have specific theme rooms with specific adult toys or adult furniture even in it. But that doesn't seem like what this is. And in a funny way, Brothel Simulator feels to me like it is so much of a game and so much of a simulator experience that you will actually spend too much energy trying to keep the happiness level, which is what I assume this is, up on different customers, that you'll eventually just tune out and forget about the adult content. It's a little too complicated of a game for an adult game. In a lot of ways, it's like one of the cooking games where I imagine a customer is ordering a specific thing, or you have to figure out what the customer wants. It is mostly positive with 114 reviews at 73% positive, so people do seem to be enjoying it. It's $6.49. Says it supports all languages, but I question that. You manage only up to 4 clients, so it won't get too crazy. At a certain level, I kind of question if this wouldn't be a game that could be censored down to just not having any adult content, and you would still have the same gameplay experience. Yeah. It seems to me like one character wants to be kissed, one character wants to see breast, one character wants you to whisper in his ear type things, or talk to him. And so you would send different girls to do different things. And at a certain point, if there is a manager character that's more like a pimp character than the brothel girls, well, I guess it's probably not that different. Imagine even an official brothel has a manager that is very much just like a pimp character. I think we can say no to Rising Frontier. These faceless characters look a little weird, and the gameplay being military trench warfare themed, it's not really my style. Like, at some point there might be a good trench warfare game, but I don't know where a focus of ragdoll physics and just keywords like intelligent AI, massive battles, and all of that seems like they're just keyword stuffing and trying to asset flip, or not even really asset flip, just sell an ugly bad game. This is something, if this was on mobile I might excuse it, or if it was cheaper I might excuse it, but altogether I can't say yes to that one. Kill Pill looks like nothing. Korean Dynasty, it's already mixed reviewed. What is this? A single player game? I feel like this deserves a short, and just out of certainty I'm gonna put it on the fall list. Like, It looks like it's a survival game, but with the special twist that you're doing a survival game as like a feudal Korean person, feudal era, which that is at least a little bit different. Like if more survival games were set in different time frames and different ranges, there might be something to that. Also, I think I'm just being incredibly generous more and more by putting more things on the follow list, which that's fine. Like, we burn through the follow list fairly quickly, so if I'm adding 5 or 6 things to the follow list and then I'm looking at 5 things on the follow list, yes, the follow list would get bigger and bigger that way, but it wouldn't get too crazy. Plus, at any point, if I did start to feel like the follow list was just far too large, I could change up what the amount of games I look at on the follow list is. Next, we have an adult game called Monster Waifus, which are flat 2D, colorful anime girls in anthropomorphic monsters. Seems to be about 8 of them. They all seem to be topless, often in like body armor, or different types of armor based on what kind of character they are. It looks like there's a dark elf, a fox girl, I would guess probably a light elf character or dryad character, and then maybe a demon girl, succubus type character. Doesn't seem like there's too much there with 8 slide puzzles, but it is 59 cents. It's English only. The artwork does seem to be consistent amongst the girls. The backgrounds are pretty low effort pictures of forests, and that's about it. So yeah, for 60 cents to get 8 monster waifu pictures, probably not worth it as an adult game, but they definitely aren't trying to pull a bait and switch on you either. They make it fairly obvious that's all they're selling. Right, Sniper Ranger says Rydo, the article's not showing. Thank you for that, but that was intentional, like, because that was an adult game, Monster Waifu, and the screenshots had a bunch of anime girls topless. So I'm experimenting here and potentially risking my channel never being monetized by showing adult games. So what happens is when I see an adult game, it's down to my own reaction to take the web peek, which is what I call this, away and show the game again, and censor myself. But inherently, when I do that, there is a crossfade that happens, so, and it is based on my own reaction time. So if you're fast enough, almost certainly, and if there's a naked anime girl here, you'll see a boob and then I'll come away from it. Now, 2 revisions ago, as far as YouTube's content policy, they said nudity in brief sections, not done to titillate in particular, was acceptable. So I do think I am within the rules of YouTube's family-friendly guidelines by reporting on games that come out and doing my best to censor it. But yes. Sniper Rangers, what you think? The people are not mature? How dare you? Laughing face, laughing face. No, it really has nothing to do with my audience or the people in general. It has to do with the fact that advertisers on YouTube and YouTube themselves are not mature. Like, my own personal preference certainly would be, heck, it's just nudity. It's almost always either CGI or cartoon animated nudity. It's nothing to really get into that big of a tizzy about. Uh, I would love to see. Uh, I would love to see to be able to just show everything in total, uh, but YouTube won't allow that. And maybe at some point, if I became big enough, I heard like maybe Patreon has its own video hosting service, so maybe there would be a way I could do it. I don't know how I could record two forms of the same video though. That would be the case. I could probably pull that off. I might need another monitor though. And I could potentially run two instances of OBS at the same time and then have a blur filter on one instance and a non-blur filter on the other. But yeah, as it currently stands, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I end up just having to talk about the adult games and describe the adult games when they come up. We will probably come up to it. Creates a weird situation too where you have a game like Traveler here, which looks like it's probably just an RPG Maker type game, and I can easily dismiss that, but then you'll get to something like this, the Paladin and the Succubi Servant, which maybe does have mature content, although in this case I think this is one of those games that maybe had adult content in it and was censored out to be listed on Steam, which that happens a lot too. And they're fairly obvious. They tend to be these RPG Maker games, and then there tends to just be another layer that was added to hide cleavage or hide toplessness. And usually in these RPG Maker games, the imagery is not that good anyways. So yeah, this is one that I would say no to for sure. It's not actually in the adult section because you get a banner here when it is in the actual adult section. Most people don't have the option on Steam to see the adult games in the first place. It's disabled by default. Also, the mature content warning, if there is one, is at the top for games in the adult section, where it's in the middle here, where you'd easily overlook it for anything that's not an adult section. In these tags, people just lie as far as these tags. They are not user-defined tags as much as they are the publisher-defined tags. They are not end-user or game player tags. Most of these games are brand new and wouldn't have any tags if that was the case. So Hentai Sports Girl, on the other hand, is adult only, and most of the time the screenshots are not acceptable and the thumbnails are not acceptable for YouTube. And then you'll get some that have screenshots that are acceptable and that aren't acceptable. Interesting here, the mature content is still pretty low, amongst other things. And these images in the descriptions don't have to be blurred or censored. The thumbnails don't have to be blurred or censored. I kind of feel like it should all be blurred by default on Steam, in such a way that you have to click to confirm to see every video and every image if it has adult content, or it should just by default have black bars. For this specific game, Hentai Sports Girl, it's a slide puzzle game with several flat anime girls, and yeah, they are all in either swimwear or workout outfits, and that's about all it is you can say. I could say also each of the screenshots are solo. It probably is worth describing some of the images as to whether there is a single person in the scene or there are multiple people, because a lot of these images are just, this is a single shot, a lewd shot, or a nude shot, versus there being actual acts of intercourse happening between two or more people. Let's see. Sniper Ranger says he's got to prepare for work, so So he's got to go. Thanks for watching, Sniper Ranger. Yeah, hentai sports girl is 59 cents again, but it doesn't feel like it's probably more than. Well, it says 24 unique sexy girls, so maybe better than 8 at least for 60 cents. Still not really worth it though. Like, you would need just a massive amount of still images to interest me there, because in particular, if you want to see lewd images, nude images, there's a great way to just find that online via Reddit and the adult Reddit fans, like r/hentai, for instance, is a great way to just go down that forum over and over again. If you can get the RSS feed of that into an RSS reader, you would get several times a day new images, and all of that is totally free. So it basically makes it impossible to justify paying for the content. Maybe it's not the most consistent content if you do it that way, or the most expensive or the most highest quality content, but free really does you very well. And certainly you could go to websites like Pornhub that are just straight up built around porn, and find images like that. And there's a couple more. You're Fired Revenge. I thought this was one of those things where I don't remember. I feel like Steam came out and said something around this idea of committing acts of violence against a specific person was unacceptable. Maybe a generic I'm gonna go shoot up my job game still is within Steam's acceptable things. I never really got the idea of people even fantasizing though about shooting up their job, or in this case maybe using a baseball bat to beat up people from your job. I never been in a situation where I thought everybody at my job sucked and I was in the right, and I think anybody that does think that is almost certainly wrong. I could see the idea of I'm going to get my boss because he's a jerk, or I'm going to get this coworker because he's a jerk. But if you think all your coworkers are jerks, well then obviously you're the jerk at that point, and you should just have some introspective. And I don't think feeding this fantasy in a low effort, low polygon game benefits much. At the very least, I could also say it makes a little bit more sense, maybe just a tiny of a fraction of a percentage more sense, for kids who are forced into schools to hate everybody around them because they're emotionally unstable because they're going through puberty, and I'm saying all kids going through puberty are emotionally unstable to some level, and you are literally being forced into, which, let's just face it, is almost a jail when you're forced to go to a school, a public school. So I could see that more. I could see teachers in general. Teachers are unique in that they are like bosses, but they're given even more power and even less checks and balances. So I could kind of see that thought, but also I still don't really see that thought much as far as just like shooting up a school or shooting up a job. I guess I'll leave it at that. Obviously somebody thinks that's a good idea, although a lot of these games clearly are just designed to catch people's attention. I think half of those types of games are just being made by, if not Russian companies, some other countries like government is just trying to create bad games to hurt capitalism, to hurt the video game industry, to promote hostility and negative thinking in general. Then you get games like this that just flood Steam, which are just the same thing multiple times. And this Carosoft has been particularly bad about doing that. And we have something called For Your Tranquility that looks interesting, in that it's animals being a forensic doctor. Interesting. There aren't that many games where you're a forensic doctor, and having it be anthropomorphic animals gets rid of some of the goriness that you would have here. Now, noticeably, I don't believe this would be the organ layout of a frog. This definitely seems to be more of an organ layout of a human. I'm not sure if frogs even have hearts, but maybe they do. And yeah, I haven't dissected a frog ever, so I don't know what's inside of them, and wouldn't want to do that. It's, I suspect, a Korean game, and I don't like that it's mixed, because this would be interesting. There is this European show that you can, this old European like public access show, where they did autopsies on bodies, and it was done by the same person who made the living bodies exhibit after the fact, where that they put in museums, where it's like full corpses on display, opened up. And it was an intriguing watch, a rough watch certainly, though, if you're not a medical inclined person, because they straight up were just doing autopsies and talking about causes of death and the human body in general. Inherently, though, if there was a push to make forensic games, it would almost be like a Bones licensed game, and very much like the Bones TV show. They would never actually show an autopsy, or they'd very rarely show bodies. Bones in particular always only got the bodies after all the viscera and the organs and the meat had been removed, for the most part. Thus the name Bones. This game doesn't support English, it's Spanish only. I might have given it a chance if I could read it. It doesn't look terrible. I guess it plays into a little bit of a stereotype here. You have a Mexican wrestler looking character being the hero of a Spanish only game, but I guess Mexican wrestler type characters are still popular, although on second thought, maybe this isn't so much a Mexican wrestler character as much as he is supposed to be a Mexican god, although then the wrestling belt and tights and cape doesn't really make sense in that case. I definitely lean towards more of a Mexican wrestler in a Mexican themed helmet. Relax Strong is $2.59 for 9 achievements, and this definitely seems like it's literally a one-screen tile match game with this one girl in this one pose every time. Every screenshot is basically exactly the same, so that's going to be a no. Jumping Cat. Yeah, despite my dislike for these frustration platforming games, I have to start admitting that they are popular enough to deserve YouTube Shorts, so I'm not going to curate them out anymore, but I'm not going to put it on the fall list. And then these card games certainly are a little prevalent, but I have to give them all a chance. Is this an adult game? No, but it requires VR and it doesn't support English. And from the looks of it, doesn't seem like there's much of anything. There's an inconsistency in the outfits too. You have kind of in these two outfits, I would say these are kind of European style, maybe Germanic outfits from the looks of it. And then you have what feels very much just like an American outfit of a tank top and jean shorts. But there is like nothing else here in the game. A VR novel game, which, yeah, making a visual novel in VR, we've seen that done before, but it never feels like a smart move. Lost Cartridge doesn't look like anything. Unholy Angel is yet another adult game. Let's see. These characters are flat 2D characters, but they are drawn in a different art style. I can show this. It's much more drawn out faces, longer faces, much more realistic body proportions compared to like the kawaii or moe style. It's kind of even maybe a little Chinese Asian inspired, but I would hope that you could call this maybe a European or just in general Western art style. Like, it feels like there's a real effort being done to draw each of these characters and focus on the face and shadowing and shading. As for what the actual game is, I actually have no idea. It seems to be some kind of puzzle game, some kind of snake-like game where you have to maybe draw a line on every cube, which that's pretty simplistic. $2.69, English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. Do we have a general idea of how many? 10 girls with 4 levels of play. So 10 girls, potentially 4 levels of undress would be my guess. So maybe 40 images for $2.70. Again, not terrible, but not particularly great. I really am just in this mushy middle where I don't want the games to be too complicated, but I don't want the games to be too simple as far as adult games. And honestly, I probably just don't know what I do want. Honey Pop feels to me like it was the best mix there, where there was a dating mini game, and then there was a match 3 mini game, and there was a visual novel all in that. Let's see, is Remember You an adult game? It doesn't seem to be. Seems to just be a general match thing. Well, obviously there is some adult content here that's blurred. But it doesn't seem like it goes that far compared to the descriptions. Yeah. Inherently, the problem with adult video games, and by adult video games I mean porn video games, is that porn has a real use and it has a real goal, where art really doesn't have use. Porn is utilitarian, art is useless, and most video games are supposed to be pretty much useless. You play through them and you get enjoyment from it, but you don't achieve any kind of secondary goal. Whereas porn has that inherent goal of titillating you or going further than titillating you. And so it has that cross focus. What you would never really see in a porn is a jump scare in the middle of it, although that would be kind of funny for somebody to make a porn with jump scares in it, or horror porn or things like that. Like, you can do parodies of horror movies, but you're not going to actually try to do a horrific porn, because it's just counter to that first titillation goal. So then when you're trying to mix those different goals together, it just kind of doesn't work. You basically need an adult game where at any point you could see a cutscene, and it would be a nicely animated, like, sex scene cutscene, and then there would be some kind of decent video game, but simplistic video game, that would earn you credits to unlock more cutscenes at that point. That would probably be the best way to do it, is to completely separate the two out and have it so that you could play the game in polite company, and they could look over your shoulder and see what you're playing on your phone, and there wouldn't be anything too offensive there in the gameplay mode. And then when you're alone, or within agreeable company at least, then you could go to a different section in the app and see the adult content. Yeah, and that would be weird too. This is an interesting thought. I'm going to give this a follow. Rebuilding from World War II. That takes the house flipper concept to a different level, and saying, hey, in World War II, a lot of Europe was destroyed. Let's in this game simulate the experience of renovating, repairing, and rebuilding it. Duelist doesn't look like anything. Elemental Raiders. Yeah, I'll give it a chance. 100 Keys to Your Heart. Doesn't look visually polished enough, I think. Inherently, if you could make a game where people were playing all the time to unlock adult cutscenes, you could also put a lot of ads in between it and have the ad revenue pay for itself. Here we have a Putin Destroys Aliens joke game, which has been a while since we've seen Putin put on a joke game around Putin put on Steam. It would make a lot of sense for Valve and Steam to say, no, we won't allow any game involving or focusing specifically around a specific political figure or real named figure to show up. Even dead people like Stalin or Hitler, like all of those, really should just, if the name of a person is in the name of your game in particular, it should be red flagged and looked at in more detail. Whereas clearly Valve does not really look at any of the games that are getting listed, and I assume the vast majority of games that are getting listed via Steam Direct, and they're just taking money for nothing. I'll give this a follow because this looks like that vampire. You know what? Actually, if this is just a clone of Vampire Survivors, why would I give it a follow? It doesn't look that good, and it doesn't deserve a spotlight. Ward Crystal. Looks like it's a Wardle clone. It doesn't look terrible, but it's not pretty enough for a short, so in that case I'll just put it on the follow list. Quest Action 3D. I doubt we'll see another adult game today, but there's always Wednesday. Starless Hotel, and then Gym Worlds. So we're at thegamedeveloper.com. Pathfinder publisher Paizo is going to introduce a new system neutral open RPG license. The lawyer, one of the lawyer guys who's super popular on YouTube, talked about the whole Dungeons and Dragons potential version 1.1 of their open role-playing license, or whatever it was called. And he covered something that I suspected was the case too, in that a lot of what is in both versions of the Dungeons and Dragons license is just kind of giving you certainty on things you legally already had the right for. Like, you can't copy trademarks, obviously, and perhaps they own specific copyrights to the names and specific drawings and appearances of specific characters in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, but the actual systems and gameplay mechanics are not really copyrightable. So you could easily go through any revision of Dungeons & Dragons as far as the rule books and take the entire systems and gameplay mechanics and make a whole new property, as long as you just kind of changed names of people. Names would be unique drawings or depictions or descriptions of people. Specifically, somebody that has like 6 attack and 6 intelligence, there's no way Dungeons and Dragons can own a copyright for that. Or the idea of rolling a d20 in general, they can't own a copyright for that. Obviously, if you were going to say something was compatible with Dungeons and Dragons, you probably are legally safe to say that, but you might say also not endorsed or affiliated with Dungeons and Dragons or Hasbro. So what the YouTubers who have been playing Dungeons and Dragons have been doing, unless they've been playing out of specific storybooks or like campaign books of Dungeons and Dragons, they probably are perfectly safe. But inherently, what Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast has done here is they've pissed off their audience, so much so that I'm keeping an eye out to see if dice and Dungeons and Dragons type paraphernalia goes on sale. I don't know what I'd really do with a set of like D100s or anything like that, but I could see people abandoning Dungeons and Dragons, probably in favor of some other game, in that they would still play something like Dungeons and Dragons. But I could see a small percentage of people, a big enough percentage to potentially hurt of game stores and comic book stores where often that's where Dungeons and Dragons was played. I could see people stop playing, and then all of a sudden those stores go out of business, and that just hurts comic book stores, game stores even more. And I could see some people just abandoning their Dungeons and Dragons fandom, which, you know, it's a small enough audience already that could really hurt it. And certainly people aren't going to come back with open arms to Dungeons and Dragons anytime soon. So they may very well jump over to Pathfinder or Warhammer or something else. The First Games Done Quick event of 2023 raised $2.6 million for charity. We already had talked about that. Google Stadia controllers being saved at the death. Google is working on a tool to enable Bluetooth support for the gamepad, which we wondered if they were going to bother to do that. But I still don't know if you would really want to buy a Stadia controller unless it's just incredibly cheap, because there's so many other controllers, and the Stadia controller, even though it has that like unique Wi-Fi ability into it, I don't think it really is much different than getting like an 8BitDo controller in most people's minds. So yeah, getting cheap controllers that don't feel good in your hands or aren't the controllers you're used to isn't really that useful. Um, Plus, there's just not too much you could program into it otherwise if you really started to hack it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some gadgets from China that use controllers that look a lot like this layout, but have completely different, cheaper internals. Let's see, we already talked about Tencent firing over 100 workers on suspicion of corruption. The company indicated there has been some nefarious activity within its video game business. Interesting. Oh, yeah. So specifically within the video game business, 100 workers have been laid off, not just 100 workers in general. I wouldn't be surprised if they laid off way more than 100 workers in their factories and used excuses of suspicion of corruption. Corruption inherently in China doesn't always mean corruption. Often people get fired or arrested on suspicion of corruption because they pissed off the wrong government agent or agency, or they said the wrong thing in general. There is an inherent culture of corruption in China. That's just a way of doing business. You do just always bribe people with little gifts, or kind of big gifts, if you get a deal going or trying to get a deal going. So there hasn't really been any real progress to weed out actual corruption in China as a cultural thing. China is a big place with a lot of different cultures, so like that's not going to change anytime soon. But they use corruption very often as an excuse to get rid of people they don't like and get rid of political dissidents. I wouldn't be surprised, since Tencent is directly connected and run by the Chinese government, that the Chinese government fired those workers and possibly did something worse to them when people weren't looking, or is possibly planning on doing something worse to them. On the other hand, if you ignore all that, I also wouldn't be surprised if there is actually just major amounts of corruption going on, which does any video game company need corruption added to the mix? Or more corruption added to the mix? Probably not. So that's another argument against Tencent buying percentages of other companies and gaining influence. The influence that they add may very well be negative influence. And then our final GameDeveloper.com article here says that there's a report that EU is going to hit Microsoft with an antitrust warning over the Activision Blizzard deal. Although warning doesn't really imply that anything would be done about it. Like, if they literally just warn them and there's no actions taken around that warning, then that's pretty toothless. Alright, let's look. Let's see, we got 2021 Bloxplode game that I'll give some more time to, although there really isn't now. I either need to decide yes on this game and just make a decision, or just say no to this game. This is basically a 3D Angry Birds clone, and I just haven't seen a better Angry Birds clone. I don't know if Angry Birds is particularly a good game in the first place. Blockline Engineer is mixed reviewed. It's one of the factory programming games, but it's not well received, so I'm going to say no to that. Block Collide is a puzzle game. Let's see. Do I want a puzzle game? Yeah, I could see it, so I'll put this on the wish list and just make a special decision there. Blob Boy, I will give more time to. Blind Spot VR. I think we can remove this because it does just look like it's a horror, maybe escape puzzle room VR game. It being in VR being the main reason why I'm getting rid of it. Blind Spot as a backwards and forwards shooting game. I'll give this more time even though it doesn't really need it. Blind is negatively reviewed. There was a time in which I was going to try and play some blind games, but I can't imagine that I would get around to that anytime soon. Blaze looks like a kids racing game, but it's not relevant enough. And then another game called Blaze that also isn't relevant enough, so arguably don't name your game Blaze. Blaster Master 03 is very positive, so that can go to the wish list. Blast Brigade and Evil Legion of Dr. Creed seems to be a platforming shooter game, which isn't really my style of game, but it's positive enough, so I'll put it to the wish list. Okay. And let's see, do we have a spectate live? Yeah, I don't think I collected the Duel live, and I should have collected it yesterday instead. Let's see if I can find this other game, because there was one other thing I know I need to talk about here. So I'm about to drop my mouse on Steam, and then that'll be it for today. Let's see, Arc. I think maybe it's Lost Ark. Lost Ark free. Let's check out Lost Ark. There. Okay, yep. I do believe it is Lost Ark that we need to talk about, because this is a crazy story in that, unless I'm 100% wrong, Lost Ark here, which is a free-to-play game and is an MMO, they have decided, for some insane reason, and it's, I assume, feels like a Chinese game, but it doesn't support Chinese language, they've decided to ban people for inactivity. Which, banning somebody on Steam in your game leaves a kind of black mark on your account, which is completely unacceptable, and inactivity is not an acceptable reason to ban things. Now, inherently this is Valve's fault for allowing any one game developer to put a black mark on somebody's account, because you're banning them, particularly for such a ridiculous reason. But you can see how this is at 27% negative or 27% positive, whereas it was at 72% overall. Now, they're inherently calling this review bombing, and this is a problem with they're calling this review bombing, but this is definitely not the case of review bombing. In what review bombing, as if it's going to be a term that's useful at all, which it pretty much has already been a well that's been poisoned and just shouldn't be used. But this is totally an issue where people are upset because the game is not up to their standards. In this case, the standard being incredibly low that you don't get banned for not playing a game. Yeah, you VAC banned innocent players. Yeah, the Valve account control. Don't download, you'll probably get banned for no reason and get a mark on your Steam account. Yeah. Now the good news here is that this will, the publisher here is Amazon Games too, so man, was that potentially intentional by Amazon Games to screw people over. But that is a very legitimate complaint here. The good news for me is I don't think I would have ever installed this game. It's not in my account and I would have never played this, but it does open up the door to the possibility of that. Here they have a thing. We have determined that an error triggered false bans and we reversed those penalties. Following a wave of bot bans, we saw an increase in ban appeals from players that were banned incorrectly impacted by the bans. We've determined that an error that triggered the false bans reversed them. So they're saying, we're sorry. Well, they don't say they're sorry. At all. They're not apologizing. They say thank you for your reports and patience, but no real apology, no saying the actual word sorry. That sucks. And see, potentially, people would have done this Witcher update crossover a month ago and then stopped playing and then gotten a back ban on their account. Valve should not be allowing companies to do back bans on an entire account. But Valve, I guess, has bigger fish to fry. Also, this game is heavily censored in the West. Apparently. This game, I believe, actually has a Korean version of it that's not on Steam. If I'm thinking of the right game. And that might explain why there is no like Asian languages here, is because this is the Amazon Games published Western version of the game. Let's see, 4,000, let's just assume 5,000 all negative reviews, though won't affect it overall, but it will affect it in the short term. Yeah, that is a problem, and that's very, very scary. Certainly that any potential game I own would try and ban me. And now that it's been shown, almost certainly some nasty developer is going to try to give away a game for free and then ban everybody in that game to just hurt people playing Steam. Like, it's going to happen. And so Valve has to make a system to prevent that from happening. They really need to have a better system to prevent bans or VAC bans in general, stopping people from playing any game on Steam or even marking their account negatively. Yes, there are a lot of cheaters out there that constantly are making accounts and cheating, but usually those accounts are just making Steam accounts to cheat at Counter-Strike Go for Counter-Strike Go skins. So I wouldn't be 100% upset if only Valve was allowed to issue VAC bans, or if only only a few trusted people were allowed to issue VAC bans. Alright, well, I'm going to show something that's a little lewd to just cover a specific topic here on Twitter as I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed. There is definitely a weirdness as far as this Wednesday Addams Netflix TV show. The actress who actually plays Wednesday Addams in the show is 20 years old, but Wednesday Addams is traditionally, in like the original comics and in the movies, typically shown as being much younger than that. The Addams Family Values, for instance, she's probably 13 years old, and yet that goth chick outfit and attire and attitude certainly caught the attention of a decent number of lewd cosplayers, which had them cosplaying as Wednesday Addams for years, if not decades now. And that has kept Wednesday Addams in the mind of a certain class of people for that whole time, whereas nobody really thinks of Pugsley Addams in contrast, or Gomez or Morticia. They don't really think of that, and that's why the Wednesday Addams show is about Wednesday Addams exclusively, and the other characters are just secondary characters. But then this gets into the situation of the snake eating its own tail now, because now you have lewd cosplayers here that are still doing the lewd cosplaying that they've already done as Wednesday Addams, but now they are kind of copying the 20-year-old character, or as she's depicted, instead of copying, I guess, a made-up older Wednesday Addams in their minds. And particularly in this case, this is like the vest from the school of the new Wednesday Addams show. Although in this case, the cosplayer here seems to have a dog next to her, which that doesn't make the most sense unless the dog is supposed to be her werewolf roommate. So yeah, that creates a weird catch-22. In contrast, you have like Spy Family here, the adult lady, and I'm not going through all the lewd cosplay that I follow on Twitter, which is half of why I follow Twitter. But in this case, the Spy Lady character, the mother character, is an adult, and so you have an adult cosplayer cosplaying an adult, and there's less awkwardness around that. Or even you have the Invisible Woman, which you don't see a lot of cosplays around that. This image also getting a lot of effects and touch up that feels like there's been a lot of touch up there. Photoshop. Or even Bayonetta, as this next image is a little too lewd to show, I think. Is an adult. Of course, you do get into that weirdness too, where Bayonetta Origins brings Bayonetta down to a younger age. So, yeah, all the fan art, lewd fan art of Bayonetta is going to feel awkward, a little bit more awkward if little girl Ceres from Bayonetta Origins becomes super popular, which really just, I think, highlights the fact that they should have not done a Bayonetta Origins. It doesn't make any sense at all. They should have made a game, frankly, based around a potential future daughter of Bayonetta if they were going to do that. OBS also wants to remind people that there's a lot of Google sponsored link ads scams that take you to virus infected, malware infected versions of OBS. The website for OBS is obsproject.com, not obs-studio.com or anything else. You can also install OBS via Microsoft Store or Steam or FlatHub if you want to do that. Yeah, I'm still waiting to upgrade OBS to version 2.9. Like, I'm gonna wait until probably version 30 comes out to upgrade that. And I assume I'm still looking at these tweets in chronological order, but who knows? It's very possible I'm not. Alright, well, I don't have anything more to do. I could definitely spend another 20 minutes dueling if I wanted to do that, but I don't think so. This is a great point to end. Wednesday will probably have a little bit more news, and we'll have a little bit more to talk about. There is still a wide variety here between some streams going 3 or 4 hours, and some streams going 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.